It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. These famous words, written over 160 years ago by Charles Dickens, could just as easily describe the world we live in today. We live in an era of unprecedented technological progress. More people have access to information, medicine, food, and comfort than at any other point in our remembered history. We can communicate across continents in seconds, explore the fabric of the universe from the comfort of our living rooms, and witness scientific breakthroughs once thought to be the stuff of science fiction. And yet, chaos ripples just beneath the surface. Division is deepening. Our culture is fractured by ideology. Trust in institutions is crumbling. The shadow of potential civil conflict is once again being whispered in both the US and Europe. We stand at a crossroads, a moment where extremes collide, where the promise of a brighter, more conscious future meets the pain of unresolved wounds and the disintegration of a common narrative. Dickens wrote those words at the dawn of the revolution, possibly sensing the tremble of history underfoot. But he might as well have written them for us, because we too are living through a great paradox, an age of light and shadow, beauty and unraveling, the age of polarity. We have, by many degrees, transcended the hardship of our ancestors. We carry in our pockets the sum of human knowledge, command machines with our voices, and map the very structure of reality at the quantum level. Life for many is longer, safer, and more convenient than ever before. And yet, we are spiritually adrift. Our culture fractures along ideological fault lines. Isolation spreads in a sea of digital noise. The mythologies that once bound us, whether religious, national, or philosophical, are unraveling, leaving behind a vacuum where meaning once lodged. The undertones of civil unrest and cultural collapse are no longer fringe. They're seeping into the mainstream. But what if this rupture is not merely a descent into chaos, but a chrysalis? Now, this is the kind of change in perception I spoke about in the last video. This is the choice I argued we have. We could choose to interpret events differently if we wish, while still confronting the existential threat, only now without fear. As I said, we live in an age of extraordinary possibility. Never before in our remembered history has humanity stood with such access to knowledge, technology, and global connection, all at our fingertips. We have decoded the genome, almost touched the stars, and begun to understand the quantum substrate of reality itself. Our external world has evolved at a dizzying pace. I need only travel to my childhood to see the contrast. Forget calculators. Fingers, toes, and an abacus were all we had as kids. Technology has moved on, all right. But internally, we are fragmented, anxious, alienated. Our cultural soul is splintering under the weight of colliding narratives and unresolved traumas. What we're witnessing isn't just political division or economic turmoil. It's the reflection of a deeper calamity. It's a crisis of meaning, resulting from the disaster of our enforced amnesia. Consciousness, both individual and collective, is at a threshold. On one side lies the comfort of old structures, old stories, old identities. In my mind, I frequently go to the 60s of my childhood, my safe place. On the other side is the unknown, a space where something new is struggling to emerge. In the last video, we looked at the meaning of suffering. Why do we suffer? we can ask the same kind of questions with regard to civilization today. Why all the turmoil? Society in many ways is a mirror of the psyche, and right now that mirror is cracked. It makes us look at ourselves, at the shadow, at our institutions, at the core of our beliefs. However, again, depending on our perception, the chaos we see around us may not be a descent into darkness, but a confrontation with it. A necessary death of illusions before the birth of a more conscious humanity. When we choose to explore these tensions, not just on a cultural level, but a spiritual, the divide and conquer mentality we looked at in a previous video is evidenced. A cabal of would-be controllers are revealed, applying that mindset to a dastardly plan. An unnamed evil seeking to occupy the shadows from which it manipulates the rest of us. And this cabal, in all probability, is working at the behest of the real controllers, whether they know it or not. The true architects of the corruption, division, and chaos in the world. A parasite who farms the human beings for the energy we provide, or the louche, as Robert Monroe, an out-of-body experiencer, calls it. And the parasites, who the Gnostics call the archons, are behind it all. And again, we have a choice about how we construe this reality. What if the controlled collapse of society we fear is also an invitation? What if the crisis in our world is asking us not to retreat into a catastrophic certainty mindset, but to awaken? Maybe this is the terrain where transformation begins, not outwardly so much, but inwardly, within our consciousness, a consciousness expanding beyond the illusion. So I invite you to come with me, if you dare, as I step into the space between perception, into the uncertain, the deeply human, to look at the tension at the heart of our time, a time when the structures of the old world are crumbling, and something undefined, something yet unformed, urges to be born. Could it be that the very instability we fear is also the doorway to deeper consciousness? So, without fear, let's step into the paradox, not to escape it, but to understand what it reveals about the deeper nature of reality and about ourselves. I'm the Grumpy Grandpa. In our last exploration, we began to unfold the deeper dimensions of reality, the vibration beneath form, the entangled quantum field that hints at panpsychism, and the radical idea that consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain, but the very ground of being itself. But in this video, we take a daring step further. We go into the storm, into the chaos of our world, and ask the unthinkable. What if the breaking of our systems, the collapse of civilization, is not a sign of the end, but a signal of a new beginning? In the book of Revelation, the apocalypse begins with the opening of a scroll sealed by 7 seals. From the first 4 seals emerge 4 mysterious riders, known throughout history as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. These archetypal forces ride out into the world not as random destroyers, but as instruments of revelation. And here lies the hidden truth. The word apocalypse comes from the Greek apokalypsis, meaning unveiling or uncovering. So the apocalypse is not the end of the world. It's the end of the illusion. The old world, built on separation, fear, domination, must fracture and disintegrate for the deeper truth to emerge. It's a necessity, an inevitability. Rebirth can only happen after death. And here I'm talking about rebirth as an awakening. Each horseman then can be seen not only as a harbinger of destruction, but as a force that strips away falsehood, exposing the foundations of suffering so that humanity might awaken. This is what lies at the heart of the first 4 seals. For many, it will be the end of the zombie mind, the dream state, and the start of something huge, a new beginning, a realization of the true self, an escape from the illusion of the matrix. But this escape will only be possible for the awakened, accelerated by the actions of the 4 horsemen. After the 5th seal is broken, it's too late. The fate of the individual is settled. The awakened will be free of the illusion, while the unawakened will experience a recycling back into the matrix, and the cycle will be repeated until the next opportunity for enlightenment. Now I'm going to look at these mysterious riders once again, and I'll be taking a slightly different view than my earlier look at the 4 horsemen. Not because I have changed my mind on the fundamental prophecies connected to each of them. I haven't. But because I want to see in them a more philosophical interpretation, not in conflict with the earlier, but as an equivalence, a fleshing out, if you like, as a symbolism which resonates with the theme of this and the last video. So let's briefly remind ourselves what I said about the 4 horsemen in an earlier episode, based on the excellent work of Jason Brashears of Archaics, I might add. Let's give credit where credit is due. The timing of the breaking of the seals is based on the Olympiad calendar, which is divided into 4-year periods. Take the Olympic Games as an example. The number 4 is foundational. 2020 saw the breaking of the first seal, the unleashing of pharmakeia, COVID, and the trauma that event brought to the world. 4 years later, 2024, saw the breaking of the second seal, the taking of peace from the earth, which is continuing today. I think the events we are witnessing around us are self-evident. 2028 will see a financial crisis in the form of hyperinflation, the foundations of which have been laid over decades. Then in 2032, death rides out, who has power over the 4th part of the earth. 25% of the earth's population will experience death, possibly through disease or hunger. We don't really know. 75% will be unaffected. But what do these horsemen have to reveal to us as the instruments of revelation further to those prophecies?
And I looked, and behold, a white horse. He who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer.
Traditionally, the white horse is seen as the spirit of conquest, sometimes interpreted as imperialism or even deceptive authority that masquerades as divine will. But symbolically, he is the mask of righteousness worn by power. In our modern age, he can be represented as ideological domination, systems and narratives that claim moral superiority while silencing dissent. Today's liberalism reflects that mentality. And does this bring back memories of COVID? How the government, lording itself over us, censored all opposition to their righteous narrative. This rider is the cult of certainty, whether political, religious, or technological, that conquers by pretending to save. During COVID, the cry from the sheeple was, "Save us!" And the mask of righteous power pretended to save with despicable mandates. I don't care where you look today, the cult of ideological certainty infests everything. And this was extremely evident during the COVID madness. One could even say that the monster, Dr. Anthony Fauci, wore the mask of righteous power. But what happens when this mask cracks? The white horse reveals our addiction to external authority, inviting us to reclaim our inner sovereignty instead. His conquest exposes the deceit of control, leading to the awakening of discernment. We begin to see through appearances, through dogmas, through the veil of deception. The white horse shatters false peace and false narratives to unveil the truth. We are finally seeing the COVID deceit being exposed today, the lies, the deception, the cruelty. What many of us saw through our inner discernment, circumventing the dogmas of deceptive power, is now being revealed for the trickery it was. A deceit augmented by the mainstream media. Never forget that betrayal.
Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another. And there was given to him a great sword.
The red horse is the spirit of conflict, division, and violence. Wherever separation exists, whether between nations, races, genders, or ideologies, he rides. He is the visible face of the inner conflict humanity has long refused to acknowledge. We are seeing this division play out today. I can't ever remember seeing such dissonance and disharmony in modern society. Yet within this chaos, a sacred mirror emerges. War, as horrifying as it is, reveals the underlying fragmentation of the human psyche. It forces us to confront the dualism within, me versus you, us versus them, light versus dark. And from this confrontation, a new possibility is born. Not in victory so much, but in transcendence. The red horse teaches that true peace can only come when we heal the division within ourselves. His sword cuts not to destroy, but to sever illusion, to awaken empathy, unity, and the recognition that the enemy is often our own shadow. He reveals the illusion of separation. What we see happening in the world today is essential to the awakening process.
And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. And do not harm the oil and the wine.
The black horse represents scarcity, famine, and economic imbalance. In our age, he rides not just in the fields of failed crops, but through the vast inequality of modern civilization, where the few gorges on abundance and the many starve. where the earth is pillaged in the name of profit. We are talking of comparisons, of course, the 1% against the 99. But famine is more than a physical hunger. It is a spiritual starvation, a need for meaning, for connection, for purity in a world of endless consumption. The black horse lays bare the cost of our disconnection from nature, from each other, and from the One, the source of all being. Perceptually, of course, not in reality. Our ultimate connection is forgotten and needs remembrance. As humans, we have a hunger for meaning. A meaningless existence is a hellish experience because consciousness is not a byproduct of biology, but the very canvas upon which reality is painted. Human life isn't merely a chain of biochemical reactions. It's an experience, and not just to passively observe, but to immerse ourselves fully in the textures of joy, sorrow, struggle, love, awe, and wonder. And in this hunger, something deeper stirs, the awakening of reverence. When we understand that the universe is conscious, panpsychism, when we feel the ache of our emptiness, we begin to remember what truly nourishes us. The black horse, then, is not a punishment, but a guide back to balance.
And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with it.
The final horseman is death, the ultimate equalizer. He comes not with cruelty, but with inevitability. He ends what must end. In our world, he takes the form of collapse, whether personal, ecological, or societal, the loss of systems, identities, roles, and the illusion of permanence. Death is feared because it reminds us that everything we cling to is temporary, elusive. But here's the deeper truth. Only through death can rebirth occur. The pale horse is not the enemy of life. He is its guardian. He clears the ground so that something new can grow. He invites us into the great surrender, into the mystery beyond form. In riding with death, we awaken to life as it truly is, not as a possession, but as a transcendence, a remembering who we are. Although this reality might be a simulation, we players within it are not machines. We are not algorithms crunching data. We are experiencers, born into this world with open eyes and open hearts, seeking something more than survival. We seek meaning. What is life without it? Strip away meaning, and what remains is not peace, but emptiness. A sterile, silent existence where moments blur into each other, days stretch without direction, and time becomes a weight we carry rather than a current that carries us. Without meaning, even the most beautiful experience is hollow. Life is just time running out. But with meaning, every moment becomes sacred. When we awaken, every breath is a verse in a poem, too vast to write alone. Meaning is the compass that guides us through the wilderness of experience. Awakening, my friends, comes through these horsemen. It's where meaning is reborn. So when we look at the world around us today, at the pandemics, the wars, the rise and fall of nations, we are witnessing not the end of the world, but the apocalypsis, the unveiling. The four horsemen are not punishers, they are awakeners. They are archetypal initiations or beginnings. Each of them tears away a veil from the false authority of systems, from the illusion of separation, from the greed of imbalance, and from the denial of death. And through this sacred storm, humanity is invited to remember who and what we truly are. This is the unveiling, the awakening. This is the end of the illusion. And all this is very close to the Gnostic view, a radical inversion of mainstream apocalyptic thought. The end of the world is not seen as a catastrophe, but a liberation. These diverse spiritual movements we call Gnosticism shared a compelling premise that our material reality is not a divine creation to be celebrated, but a cosmic prison from which the enlightened must escape. In the Gnostic worldview, a perfect divine realm, the pleroma, stands in opposition to our corrupt material world, created not by the true God, but by the flawed demiurge. And within humans resides a divine spark, a fragment of true spiritual reality, kept imprisoned by archons, cosmic wardens who maintain our ignorance. Salvation then comes through gnosis, direct knowledge of one's divine nature and origin. And this vision resonates curiously with our modern awareness, where simulation theory and digital realities have popularized the concept of worlds behind worlds. It challenges us to reconsider the apocalypse not as an ending, but as an unveiling. This world cannot be saved. It's not meant to be. The apocalypse is not just the end. It's the beginning of expanded consciousness. But it is the end of the mirage, the end of the deception, the end of the illusion. Until the next time.